So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Session's been going well so far. Worth coming out on a rainy Montreal morning. Great. So thank you for joining us here at the Palais de Congrès de Montréal, and to those of you joining us online via our interactive webinar, welcome to the third annual Quebec Forum on Arthritis. The second session today we'll be talking about food to the rescue, using food to manage inflammation. My name is Douglas Emerson. I'm the National Manager of Communications at the Arthritis Society, and it's my pleasure and privilege to be moderating this morning's session. If you're here today, you already know at least a little bit about the Arthritis Society, namely that we're sponsoring this conference. A couple of other things you may not know. We've been helping people with arthritis put their lives in motion for over 65 years. We fund more arthritis research in Canada than any other non-governmental body. And we offer extensive education, publications, and programs to help the nearly 5 million Canadians who are living with arthritis and the people who care for them to live better with arthritis today while we work together towards a cure. I'm going to be monitoring this morning's session. We have people dialing in, watching us online who are going to be asking questions. We will have a question and answer session at the end. If you're in the room, you can line up behind the microphone and ask your questions there. For those of you listening in online, you can ask your questions at any time during the session using your chat tool on the webinar screen. I'll be monitoring it over here, and I'll make sure to ask them at the end of the session. We'll get through as many as we can. But we do have to finish spot on 12:15, so without any further ado, I'll start with the proper introduction. Inflammation is natural and a necessary function in the body when it's working properly. But when it gets out of hand, it leads to, well, all kinds of problems. And inflammation and inflammatory disease is on the rise in Canada. And that includes the many, many forms of arthritis that bring us here today. And yes, I'm including osteoarthritis in that list. I live with osteoarthritis myself, and evidence is increasingly showing that inflammation does play a role in OA. So for those of us living with inflammatory disease, we're constantly on the lookout for ways to manage our disease and manage inflammation and the symptoms it provokes: pain, fatigue, limited mobility, and others. The goal is we want to be able to enjoy full, rich, productive lives. And while medications can help, we're looking for answers that we can manage ourselves. There's an old saying, you are what you eat. Go online and you'll find any number of competing and often contradictory claims. What should we eat? How much should we eat? What should we avoid? There are almost as many opinions as there are people asking questions. Here today to help us sort through the confusion and learn some lessons we can apply to our own lives, we're joined by nutritionist and author Kim Arrey. Kim runs a thriving nutrition consultancy here in Montreal, where over the last 30 years she's helped thousands of clients with chronic health problems such as arthritis. Co-author with Dr. Michael Starr of the book The Complete Arthritis Health, Diet, Guide, and Cookbook. Kim gives presentations on healthy eating choices to help reduce inflammation and pain, and her blog focuses on using food as a tool to manage arthritis. A graduate of McGill University, Kim completed her integrated internship at several major Montreal hospitals. She's a member of the Ordre Professionnel des Diététistes du Québec. That's close. Dietitians of Canada, and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. She also works in a volunteer capacity with us at the Arthritis Society, serving on both our Ask the Experts panel and our Quebec Division's advisory board. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Kim Arrey.
I was going to say, I hope you can all see me. There's something that has not changed in my life. When I was 5 and they wanted to put me in the school pageant, they had to put me on a chair so everybody could see me and I could reach the microphone, and it didn't get better yet. So I hope everybody can see me behind this. Great. So it's great to see everybody here today. And I guess I want to tell you a little bit about nutrition and arthritis, and I want to tell you some good news. And the good news is we've stopped looking for the dietary bad guys. And the reason I say that's a good news is because, you know, when I started researching nutrition and arthritis, and that was way back in 1981, we were looking at always, what food should I avoid? That one miracle food. You know, if I could find that one thing to stop eating, and then my arthritis would go away. And that's what I really need to do, to focus on this one thing. We've even got case studies out there that showed, you know, this person did this and they got better. And the case studies were validated that, you know, somebody took this out of their diet and their CRP levels went down. And isn't that brilliant? And then we'd go do a trial and we'd get a whole group of people together to try and see if that changed their arthritis. And guess what? Nothing happened. So that's why I say we now have good news. The first good news is that scientists are more and more convinced that actually diet is playing a huge role in inflammation and the inflammatory response. And the second bit of good news is that scientists are now looking at the whole diet approach. So instead of looking for what you're not supposed to eat, they're looking at what you're supposed to eat to help your immune system work better and help your body work better. And that is so much more fun because you actually get to eat a lot of food. So the other thing too is we're not looking at the 5 superfoods. And I think that's really important to remember. This is not about the 5 superfoods that contain a whole bunch of stuff. This is about just having a good balanced approach that's going to help you to prevent inflammation. Now, if I can figure out what I'm supposed to click on here, how do I click on this?
That's an excellent question.
Get my slides. I do have slides. I just don't know what I'm supposed to click.
There we go. So to the right.
To the right? Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. So you see, I have this thing, technophobia. So I'm going to ask you if you drive with both feet. So has anybody ever been in a car with somebody who drives with both feet? Yes, I see somebody raising their hands. And my dad used to drive like that, and we used to, you know, we used to look like those bobblehead dolls doing this. And oh, it was horrible. And people would, you know, pass him and they'd be shaking their fists. It was no fun. Well, I ask you if you drive with both feet, because that's what you do if you eat whatever you feel like and you have inflammation. Now you're taking all this medicine to put the brake on your inflammation, but you're eating all this food that, you know, puts the gas pedal, the accelerator on your inflammation. So we want you to stop doing that. We want you to just kind of have a nice, smooth ride. So we want everything to go as smoothly as possible, and that means you want to have a healthy food choices.
There are some seats at the front if people are looking to sit down.
So, and I know from my years of consulting and meeting with patients and speaking that everybody looks at me when I say eat healthy and they go, oh my God, here she goes again. She's going to make us eat cardboard and hockey pucks. Ugh. And I know people think this because I eat with my clients, and whenever they bring me the lunch that they think, you know, the dietitian wants, oh my God, you know, this like chicken that's baked so dry that I could, like, you know, throw it at the wall and maybe there'd be a dent, and steamed broccoli, this little thing of steamed broccoli, and God forbid it would touch the other vegetable, like everything's all separated, no sauce, no spice, no nothing. And I'm thinking, my God, if that's your version of healthy eating, no wonder you can only do this for a week. Like, I'd go shoot myself. So the other reaction is a little bit different. It's like, okay, now you expect me to turn into Iron Chef, you know? Spend my life in the kitchen, cooking everything from scratch. Oh my God, this is so hard. Nah, it's not that bad. I think you want to remember that we can eat really healthy no matter how we do it. There's a lot of ways to do it, and I think that's so important to remember. And now more than ever, we have many, many tools to help us. I was recently speaking to somebody from France, and I was telling her that, you know, in North America, we tell everybody how you're supposed to do your grocery shopping once a week and plan all your meals in advance, and that's the key to eating healthy. I thought she was going to pass out when I said that. She said, once a week? Are you crazy? We stop at the grocery store every day. We eat very healthy, but we go in the on our way home from work, we stop, see what's fresh, what looks good, and that's what we make. What are you telling me? Decide on Sunday what I'm going to eat on Friday. Are you insane? And if you look at that, they have less obesity in France than we have here. So maybe there's something in what they do, and maybe, you know, we have to think a little bit different about this. And it's actually pretty common in Europe that people are actually eating grocery shopping on a daily basis and not doing these big things. So I think there's a lot we can do that's simple to eat healthy. So what we're going to do today is we are going to look at the top 3 things you need to do in your eating habits to help you to get on this anti-inflammatory program, okay? And the first thing is following the Mediterranean way of eating. I think that's really important. Next, we're going to look at how you cook your food, because how you cook your food is as important as what food you're cooking. And then the last thing we're going to look at are some of the obstacles people tell me, because, oh my goodness, I've heard some really good ones over the years. So let's talk about the Mediterranean way of eating. Are you all familiar with that? Have you heard about the Mediterranean way of eating? Yes? No? Okay. I have some people going yes, and I have some people going no. So basically, I want to remind you that the Mediterranean diet is actually based on how the people of the Mediterranean region eat. But it's based on how the farmers or the people who live off the land eat. It's not based on the city slickers who have adopted more North American eating habits. Okay? And it's a little bit different than what we're used to eating. And I think what we're typically used to seeing is a food pyramid, right? Have you all seen that food pyramid of the Mediterranean diet? Okay, well, I've come up with something a little bit different, because the more I talk about the pyramid, the more people get confused and the more they forget important parts to it. So we have come up, my colleague Arlene Tavarov and I have come up with the anti-inflammatory food circle. And the fun part about the anti-inflammatory food circle is that we have some very, very, very important information at the center. And the center of the circle is you. Okay? And I think that's what's important for you to remember. The center of the circle is you, so we have to adapt all of this to your lifestyle and you and how you feel. We can't try and make you turn you into the lady who cooks all day long or the gentleman who likes to grocery shop when you hate it. We have to do what works for you, but get healthy food into you. The other thing we have to remember that in arthritis and in inflammation, lifestyle plays an important role. So we have some wonderful studies that show that people who are less physically active have higher levels of CRP. We have wonderful studies that show that people who are not sleeping well have higher level and are stressed have higher levels of CRP. So that important center part is really good. I have a lot of clients who stress so much over what they eat. I swear to God, they're creating more inflammation because they're so stressed about what they ate. And maybe they need to just like breathe, you know, breathe a bit and relax and have some fun. See, fun is part of this too. Exercise is crucial to people with arthritis, and so you want to remember to always check with your physiotherapist or kinesiologist to see what exercises are best for you. I know after I found out I had arthritis in my shoulder, my physiotherapist said, well, don't do this and don't do that. So I'm now known as the one-armed Zumba lady. So I go to Zumba, but I don't do any of the movements with my left arm because too many repetitive movements cause me problems. So I'll do like 1 out of 5 movements with my left arm. I tip over sometimes, but I still go and have fun, and it's okay. I get the exercise. And that's what's important, is to find out what your limitations are and be as active as possible. If we look at this, we see that all the groups are represented. So we see we have vegetable and fruit, and there's a reason we talk about vegetable and fruit. We want you to eat more vegetables than fruit. We want you to have healthy oils, so avocados, olives, olive oils, nuts. Those are great healthy oils to have. And we want you to remember to include herbs and spices, because many herbs and spices have anti-inflammatory properties. Did you know even lowly black pepper can reduce inflammation? Whole grains. Notice the whole on whole grains, not white refined, with a lot of sugar. Whole grains, again, are very important to reducing inflammation. And legumes, lentils, or pulses. That's a new word now, pulses. Pulses, chickpeas, lentils, dried beans, all those foods are going to help reduce your inflammation. Dairy plays an important role in the Mediterranean diet. Mostly, though, in the Mediterranean, they don't drink a lot of milk. They eat a lot of fermented products. So they're going to mostly have yogurt, and they're mostly going to have cheese. And we think that that plays a key role in inflammation because we know in people who have an immune response, and let's say rheumatoid arthritis, their gut bacteria is a little unbalanced. And so we think that eating fermented food is going to help you to keep your gut bacteria, the ratio of healthy bacteria to not so healthy bacteria, in balance. And so we want you to get some dairy products. Then the protein should mostly come from fish and chicken, white meat, rabbit, that kind of thing. And just a tiny little bit from the red meat. Now in the real Mediterranean diet, they're actually only eating red meat about once a month. And red meat counts as anything that came from an animal that has 4 legs. Okay, so it doesn't mean, oh, well, the color of the meat was lighter, so it's okay. No, it's got 4 legs, no. Okay, so this becomes something that was consumed only about once a month in the real Mediterranean diet, but we'll be really happy if you go down to about 500 grams a week, which is what's recommended by the World Cancer Research Fund. And the last thing on the Mediterranean diet is that tiny little thing for sweets. There's not a lot of sugar in the Mediterranean diet. The sugar comes from the fruits. Not a lot of sweets, not a lot of desserts. Desserts is for feast days. So a big dessert on a typical night in a Mediterranean household would be yogurt with a little bit of honey on it and some fruits. That would be a big sweet. And the big desserts only come out at, birthdays or something. So why is this so important? Well, it's so important to your arthritis because eating like this is going to help reduce inflammation, and that's at the source of your pain. That's what's actually causing your stiffness, your redness, all that goes with your arthritis. So if we reduce the pain at the source, it's going to be really effective. And we know from the new studies that this applies as much to osteoarthritis as to any other kind of arthritis. The other thing I want you to remember is the last time we checked on the studies on the Mediterranean diet, there were more than 1,500 studies. Probably now there's closer to about 1,700. And what's really important about the Mediterranean diet as well is it plays a key role in reducing the other risk factors that come with arthritis. So it plays a key role in reducing your chance of developing heart disease, type 2 diabetes, depression, Alzheimer's, you name it. There's that macular degeneration. Every week there's another study that says Mediterranean diet and it reduces the risk of. So I think it's really important to remember this and to remember that this is a way of eating that the whole family can follow. So you don't have to say, well, I'm eating well for my arthritis, but I have to cook something else for my husband because my husband has a heart problem. No, same diet. Or I'm eating well for my arthritis, my kids can't eat this. No, it's going to prevent their acne. It's good for them. It actually, we've seen for kids who follow the Mediterranean diet have more attention. They have less symptoms of ADD. So it's good for the kids too. So, no objections about can't do this for the rest of the family. So what is the Mediterranean diet doing? Well, it's increasing their intake of omega-3 fats. Omega-3 fats reduce inflammation. It's also increasing fiber, and we have huge numbers of studies that show when you have more fiber in your diet, you're going to have lower levels of CRP, C-reactive protein. It's also going to include all those great minerals and vitamins and phytonutrients that will reduce inflammation. And so we want to get those into your body, and the best way to do it is from the food you eat. We also know that by following the Mediterranean diet, you are actually going to be reducing the amount of food that you're eating from those nutrients that are going to promote inflammation, like sugar. Do you know, I just read 2 new studies, and I was really fascinated by them, because one of them said that one of the dietary factors that was most associated with the risk of developing rheumatoid arthritis was the consumption of sugar-sweetened soft drinks. And then they did another study. They followed that up with a study that said, well, when we reduce sugar-containing drinks, so reduce the sugar in the body, guess what? The symptoms of arthritis and the CRP levels reduced. That seems pretty simple. I know it's like too simple to be true, right? We would really like it to be something more exotic, like I had to leave out something fancy from my diet, and no, it's just really simple. A little less sugar. So how are we going to do this? Well, it's actually pretty easy. Really, it's easy. You just have to be a little creative. The one thing I want you to remember is, even though this is a Mediterranean food guide, this doesn't mean you have to only eat food from the Mediterranean. And as a matter of fact, there's actually this whole new thing in the research where they're looking at something a little bit different, and they're looking at the northern diet, because they kind of decided that, you know, there were people living up north in Europe, you know, like the Vikings. They didn't go there last Tuesday, right? They've been there a couple of years, and they must have been eating something good for them to survive all these many generations. So they started looking, and they're finding there are a great many northern plants that we've stopped including in our diet. Even the native peoples in North America, what were they originally eating? Because they must have been eating something to have survived all these years. They can't have been eating this stuff we're eating. We would have killed ourselves by now. They'd all be dead. So we don't have to eat necessarily food that comes from the Mediterranean region. There are definitely, you know, when we're talking about vegetables and fruit, we eat what's common to our area. And so it doesn't have to become this exorbitantly pricey diet that only relies on imported food. So what can you do? Well, as I said, it's simple. It starts in the morning with your breakfast. What are you going to do? So you start by having a whole grain cereal. There you go. You have some oatmeal. That's pretty simple, easy. Everybody eat oatmeal? Yeah. Great. It's good for you. And if you want to not eat oatmeal, there's other great cereals you can eat. There's a buckwheat cereal now that you can have that you just use just like oatmeal. There's all kinds of things. And add some fruit, and there you go. Add a little bit of milk to that, or you know, some people I know cook it with water, and then they just add some cheese or something on the side, or they eat an egg on the side. Great, great breakfast. Oh, and you're saying, but Kim, it takes long to cook. Well, you know, you can do overnight oats, put it in the mason jar, add your yogurt, close it up, put the jar, oh, you don't have to use a mason jar. You could be like not so fancy and just put it in a plastic container, but on Pinterest, you can only use mason jars. I think it's so cute. They have all these things, and it's like, okay, just put it in a plastic container. It really works. And you just put your yogurt and your oats and your fruit in the jar, close it up, or the container, put it in the fridge overnight, and in the morning, it's ready. Nice. But kind of avoid the one in the package unless you get the plain one, because the one in the package comes with a lot of sugar. So you can have a soup for lunch. Well, you know, the soup for lunch is really cool. And again, my clients will tell me, Kim, I'm not going to spend hours cooking. I get it. But you can go buy some no sodium or low sodium broth, chicken, beef, whatever, vegetable, whatever you like. Buy a bag of frozen vegetables and a can of chickpeas. Wow, you have soup. Add some spices, let it cook for a little while, and you have soup. That's not hard. Yes, it would be much more ideal if you made the broth and strained the broth and took the fat off and did all that, but I know a lot of us are not going to do it. Don't let that stand in your way. You can make a delicious salad like this. So this salad has quinoa. It's got lots of green vegetables. It's got some fruits in it. It's got some pears and some grapes. It's got some nuts. That's another great way to add some vegetable and fruit in your diet. Get some whole grain. So the quinoa's got some whole protein, some complete protein, and it's got also some great fiber. So that's another good thing to have. And you can complete the amount of protein by adding, again, a little bit of cheese with your dessert, or yogurt, Greek yogurt with your dessert. This has got to be one of the simplest I've ever seen. So you want to have fish. I have a lot of clients who go, Kim, I don't know how to cook fish. I don't know what to do with my fish. Okay, buy some smoked salmon. Put your smoked salmon on, get a little bit of quark cheese or some ricotta cheese. Put your smoked salmon on top. Have a nice whole grain bread. And now you had some fatty fish. That was pretty simple. And then you can add a soup with that, you know, that vegetable soup we talked about before, have that, make a complete meal. But it was still very simple. Didn't really take a lot of prep, and it's still really healthy. Another salad, again, this one's got some cheese in it and some vegetables. And again, the emphasis on having at least half your plate with vegetables in it. So you really want to make sure you're loading up with some veggies and not skimping there. I think in the old days we used to make half our plate have, you know, rice and pasta and whatever, and then only a quarter of the plate with veggies. Well, we want to switch that around. And here's another version of vegetable soup. A great thing to do with your supper to get that extra portion of vegetables in, especially in the wintertime, is to have vegetable soup. In the summertime, we have this, you know, vast array of wonderful fresh fruits and vegetables to include in our salads. And in the wintertime, when it's a yucky day like today, you look at a salad and go, but I want something to warm me up. Ooh. Well, so good. Make a bowl of soup, have that to start your meal, and then go forward. Or make a stew and put a bunch of vegetables in your stew. Stewing your vegetables is healthy too. It's not because it's a salad that it became like 7 times healthier or something. So this is a great example of how we want our plate to look. And I'm going to first tell you that clearly this was made by a chef, because my plates never look like this. I'm not the artistic type. I just kind of throw it all on the plate and say here, and if I'm really lucky, people go serve themselves, and then I don't have to even bother with that. So, but what I want you to notice about this plate is we have a medium-sized portion of chicken, about the size of the palm of your hand. Okay, and that's how you right-size your portion of chicken, is you make it the palm, or meat or fish, is you make it the size of the palm of your hand. So the size of the palm of my hand is perfect for me because I'm a little person, right? I'm not very tall, as you can tell, because I'm hiding behind this thing. But somebody who's 6'4", well, come and let's just show everybody your hand and my hand. I don't know if you can actually see this, but it would be a little bit different. But that right sizes the portions for both of us. I would never expect you to eat the same amount of food as me.
You have no idea how happy you just made me.
Yeah, I know. I can see everybody going, oh my God. But it's the palm of your hand that's going to make it right for you. It's not the palm of my hand. I mean, unless, of course, you're my size. Okay? But what I want you to notice is we used to serve that on this lovely bed of potatoes or this amazing bed of rice or something. And now we've got, and then we'd have like one sprig of vegetables sticking up somewhere. You know, you know how the chefs do it, one little thing of veggies sticking up. Well, what we've done here is we've got tons and tons and tons of veggies. And the chicken is on top of that. And we only have a little bit of the grains or the starchy foods. And that's what we want your plate to focus on. Get all those nice veggies in there. So now we get to dessert. And I think dessert is the thing that is really, really interesting. And I'm going to tell you a little story about the first meal I made when we got married. Now, I'm Lebanese origin and my husband is French Canadian. And before we got married, my husband lived in Victoriaville, which is a town about 200 miles southeast of Montreal. And his mom made 2 hot meals a day, and she made a dessert with each meal. And so we come home from our honeymoon, and I cook dinner, and I make this beautiful grilled chicken. I've got all these grilled vegetables. I don't think I even made potatoes or rice. And the gravy was yogurt and cucumbers, you know, tzatziki. And the first thing he says when he comes to the table is, "Where's the gravy?" Because he's used to a pitcher of gravy on the table and a special one just for his sister. Like, the rest of the family gets one and his sister gets her own. And we sit down at Christmas dinner and we have 5 things of gravy on the table. And I'm like, but there's only 10 people here. I don't know. Anyways, so he looked at that and he kind of went, "Okay, where's the gravy?" And I said, "Oh, it's the yogurt." And he said, "Okay," and that was fine. And then he said, "Okay, dessert." So I went in the house and I brought him an apple. And he said, "What the hell is that?" And I said, "It's your dessert." And he said, "No, you don't understand. There's no sugar." And I said, yeah, apples are full of sugar. He said, no, but there's no sugar. And how can I pour cream on it? Because at home, even when they had iced cake, they served it in a fruit nappy and they poured cream on it. Yeah. So I had to go. I ran in the house. I didn't want to get divorced on my first day home from my honeymoon. I thought that would be a little much. So I ran in the house, and this is what I did. I cut up the apple and I baked it, and I put a little bit of brown sugar and a little bit of nuts on it, and I zapped it in the microwave, and it, you know, so I had a little bit of sauce and a little bit of sugar on it, and he brought it back, and I said, "Here you go." And he said, "Oh, what a delicious dessert." And that's how I learned that you can take a fruit and transform it to dessert with just a little bit of love and care. So, and now, by the way, 30 years later, I will tell you that the only dessert he eats is plain Greek yogurt with a little bit of homemade, no sugar added jam and a little bit of muesli in it. And goes, "Wow, this is so good." Takes time, but you get there. So,
we don't change fast, but we change.
Exactly. But I think what's important to remember in this is you can take something and you can change it over time, and you can take something and make it fun, and a lot of it is in the presentation. Clearly, when you're having, and I'm just going to go backwards here, when you have this, which is yogurt and fruit, it doesn't look half as lovely as this, which is also yogurt and fruit. Right? So sometimes it has to do with how you present it as opposed to what you've done to it. I know when I could serve my husband a fruit salad, he would eat it, but if I just gave him a piece of fruit and said, "Bite in," he wouldn't eat it. So I think we want to remember that when we're thinking about what we eat, because we eat with our eyes and we eat with our nose as well as with our mouth. So if you want some tips on what to do, I think there's lots of resources out there. As we said, I want you to look for resources from reputable sources. So I have 2 resources that I can share with you: the Complete Arthritis Health Diet Guide and Cookbook, and also the Inflammatory Food Center Volume 1, Get Informed, Get Organized, and Get Cooking, which are brand new, released just today. Remember, you can use old favorites. Who doesn't like baked beans? And so you can use old favorites. You don't have to always be on the lookout for brand new recipes. You might have to adapt it. So you might, instead of taking the baked beans that have a ton of molasses and brown sugar and I don't know what else in it, you might want to find a kind of baked beans that's more tomato based, so you're not getting quite as much sugar. Or you could play with the recipe, and you might even find out that if you have half the amount of sugar than the recipe, you might do really, really well, and that's great. So now, how do you cook your food? Because I mentioned before cooking was important. Well, we want to cook to reduce ages. Ages are advanced glycation end products. So you know on the Food Network, when you have all those chefs talking about caramelization, you know they want everything to be that nice, beautiful golden brown. It's going to take, no. Advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, are made when we combine protein and sugar, and browning your food makes that protein and sugar reaction. And we know that advanced glycation end products are like, well, they really add fuel to your inflammation. They really send it off. And so what we want to do is we want to reduce the amount of advanced glycation end products that you put into your diet. So the good news is the body actually has a system for getting advanced glycation end products out of the body. The bad news is that if it overloads, those advanced glycation end products are just going to go circulating around and wreak havoc and cause inflammation. And the bad news is in North America, everything we do in our diet, like drinking a lot of sugar-sweetened beverages, or especially the darker ones, all those things are going to increase that advanced glycation end products, and that's going to make more inflammation. So what can you do to reduce the advanced glycation end products? Well, one of the ways is to use moist heat methods of cooking. So you know how people barbecue 360? You know, 365 days a year people are on their barbecue. I'm fascinated by this. In the rain, who cares? Umbrella outside. New Year's Day, freezing cold, parka outside. What? So no, we don't need to be doing all that grilling. That is causing an issue. Get your old recipes out. You know, the ones that you would put in the oven and cook at 200 degrees for all day long? Or get your crock pots out or your steamers out. That's really healthy. So I'm not saying never do the grilling. That's not what I'm saying. But could we mix it up a bit? Just like when everything else in nutrition, where we like you to do a little bit of everything. We don't want you to always eat the same vegetable. We want you to eat a variety of vegetables. Why don't you use a variety of cooking methods? So another thing you can do to reduce advanced glycation end products is to do some marinating. So if you marinate your food in acid before you grill it, that's going to reduce the formation of advanced glycation end products. So instead of just taking your steak and putting it on the grill, if you can marinate it in a nice red wine or red wine vinegar marinade before you cook it, that's going to reduce inflammation for you. That's going to reduce those formation of advanced glycation end products. Okay? So I just wanted to show you, if we look at, and this is kind of a table, we mixed all the different kinds of meat and fish together because the results are pretty similar. These are actually for beef, but you see the same pattern with all of the different meats. So when you pan fry or grill the meat, look at the amount of advanced glycation end products you have. Right off the edge of the scale. When you broil it, so okay, I'm going to be real, I'll cook it in the oven and I'll broil it or I'll bake it, it's going to go right off the end of the, well, not quite off the end of the scale, but it goes pretty high. Whereas when you microwave it, so there's no browning. When you cook things in the microwave, it looks a little gross unless you pour some sauce on it. You ever cook chicken in the microwave and it's really white and you kind of look at it and go, okay, I better put a gravy on that because, or stew your chicken or stew your beef. Again, the advanced glycation end products go down. Now, what I want to I'm showing you the raw version. I'm not advocating that you eat raw meat. You know, there's bacteria there. That's not, I just wanted to show you what happens between the raw and when we actually cook it. Okay. And as I said, although it's lower for white meat like chicken, and it's lower for fish, the starting point is lower, so the end points are lower. We see the same pattern in all the graphs. So here we're talking about adding the acid again. So we really want to remind you to add that acid and to do that marinating to reduce the advanced glycation end products. Okay, so now I've given you all this information. Now it's time for you to stop driving with both feet. And it's time for us to figure out what you're going to do. Not what I'm going to do or what somebody else did or follow a menu plan that somebody made for somebody else. What can you do? So let's look at some of the objections. And the first one drives me absolutely insane. And it's when somebody says, well, I read that food has nothing to do with arthritis, so I can eat whatever I want. And insert whatever health professional you want, said that food has nothing to do with this. Well, I think what they mean is it's not going to cure you. It might help you, but it's not going to cure you. I think that's what they mean. And I think they're also assuming that you're already following the Mediterranean diet when they tell you that. They're not assuming that it means you can go do whatever you feel like and eat whatever junk food you want. That's not the assumption. But that's what some people do. So this just drives me absolutely starker. So we don't want you to do this. We want you to look at your current eating habits and then try and figure out what you can do to move forward to a healthier path. And it's so important to move forward to that healthier path, because if you're eating well, yes, it will help your arthritis, but it's also going to help to prevent all those other comorbidities we talked about. The high blood pressure, the type 2 diabetes, the heart disease, and that's all really important because we have enough to manage our arthritis. Lord, I know I have it in my shoulder. It's enough managing that. I don't need to manage a whole bunch of other stuff. One thing is enough. So let's try and keep all those other things at bay. And let's treat our body as it should be treated. Okay? I'm always fascinated that people spend so much more time taking care of their cars than their bodies. You know, when there would be no question, nobody would take a Formula One race car and try and put regular gas in it. They wouldn't even think about it. Of course, they're going to get this special high octane, I don't know, fancy stuff. But why are we trying to treat our bodies like I don't know, and not even put ordinary gas in? We're even lower grade than that, some of us. So the other objection, as I told you before, is the cardboard and hockey pucks thing. Well, I'm sure by now, hopefully I've convinced you, and hopefully you've seen, it doesn't have to be cardboard and hockey pucks. And I think the new studies are showing us that it doesn't have to be this really restrictive program either. And I think we can make the food tasty. It takes a little bit of effort. It's a little bit of a challenge, but we can do it. We can make food tasty. We don't have to work that hard. Part of it is how we serve it, how it looks. Part of it is remembering to use all those delicious herbs and spices, because almost all of them have some kind of anti-inflammatory properties. So let's get them into our bodies. And we want to get all those good nutrients in our bodies to help us. It's easy to make it taste good. We have lots of ideas, again, in all kinds of different resources. So go searching on the internet and you'll find great resources. What you really want to remember is that if there's a resource that tells you to eliminate too many foods, check twice. Think about it twice before you start it. Also, the other thing, and I have this too, so my arthritis is in my left shoulder and I'm left-handed. So you should see me trying to cut up squash. I was in Costco, and the thing about arthritis, I'm sure you noticed, is we don't have a big A on our forehead, I was in Costco and I bought the squash already cut up. You can buy the package, it's all cut up. And this lady looked at me and goes, well, how lazy are you that you have to buy your squash already cut up? And I wanted to take the squash and, yeah, because, but it's because it really bothers me if I do that much cutting. So I think it's important for us to ask for help where we need it. Buy foods. Yes, prepared foods are not good for you, but usually when it's prepared, what we mean is something that's really refined. But taking something that's maybe going to your local grocery store and buying, getting them to cut up your vegetables for you, that's okay. They didn't add anything to that, that's a good thing. And maybe that'll mean you'll actually do something with it when you get home and eat it. Or buying frozen vegetables that are already ready but have nothing added to it. Again, that's a good thing because you'll actually use them. Now there's many things you can do. Yes, you can ask your friends and your family for help, but you can also there's meal service. If you live alone, there's services that will bring you a couple of recipes a week in a box, and all you have to do is prepare, it brings you all the ingredients. So if you need one shallot, one shallot, they send you one shallot. So now you don't go, oh my God, what am I going to do with the rest of? And you know, my mom lives alone, and she's, but Kim, if I buy a cauliflower, I'm going to be eating I'm going to be eating cauliflower like for a week and everything. So they send you just enough cauliflower for your recipe. You do all the cooking, but they deliver that right to your door. There's other services that deliver prepared meals right to your door. You can hire a personal chef. You could ask your cleaning lady. My mom has a cleaning lady. My mom's 88, and she has a cleaning lady. And she says, you know, cutting, because her arthritis is in her hands, cutting my food is getting harder. Why don't you get her to cut your food for you? Sure. She was thrilled with the idea. So just have to ask and propose things. Think outside the box. The important thing is to get nourishing food into your body. It would be great if your hot little hands made it. But the fact that your hot little hands made it does not make it 6 times more nutritious than if somebody else's hot little hands made it. Now, the other thing that I find happening is people go on these really diets that make them seem like they're in a prison. Has anybody ever tried one of those? Yeah. How did you do on it? Yeah. Well, my problem with them is, first of all, most of them are not based in science. Every year, you know, I'm always looking at the research on arthritis, and I have to say there were some studies done back in the early 2000s, 1990 something and 2000, about vegan diets and low-fat, gluten-free vegan diets, and really they always found that they only helped about 25% of the population. So there's a good news and bad news in that. And the good news is that it helped 25% of the population. The bad news is I have no way of knowing which 25% of the population would respond well to that. So the only way to know that is for you to try it for a little while, and if nothing happens, stop. But in general, all the studies we see show that these draconian diets don't work. There's no scientific basis for eliminating any one food to clear up your arthritis. How many people with osteoarthritis have heard that they should eliminate nightshade vegetables? Again, no scientific evidence. Right? And actually, if you look at the new studies on those same vegetables, they're actually full of anti-inflammatory products. So maybe not. Maybe it's just in some people who are particularly sensitive to that, which is okay. Some people are allergic to peanuts. That doesn't mean everybody in the world has to stop eating peanuts. That just means the people who are allergic to peanuts have to stop eating peanuts. Look, I have a great aunt who can't digest lettuce. That does not mean the whole world doesn't digest lettuce. It means she has, for whatever reason, doesn't tolerate lettuce. So don't eat it. And I think we all have to learn to understand how our body works. And there may be some foods that aggravate our arthritis, but there may not be particular foods. And it may be important for you to focus way more on that anti-inflammatory food circle and general good healthy eating, as opposed to looking for that miracle. So you don't need to be in jail. You don't need to be in a food jail. You need to be enjoying your food. You need to be having fun with your food.
Would you recommend that people keep track of their food the way they're keeping track of their other aspects of the lifestyle, like how you slept, how are your symptoms in a given period, if they're wanting to monitor their responses and identify what's a trigger for them?
Definitely, because if you don't keep track, you'll never figure it out. You just won't. You have to keep track. And the other thing to do is you have to test yourself. So you have to take that food out of your diet and then add it back in. So, I think this is it. Fine. I'm going to take it out of my diet for a month. Okay, now I'm putting it back in my diet and seeing what's happening. So now that you know what you're supposed to be doing, what I really want you to do is to look at what you're eating and see how you can do something. And I want you to remember, our behavior scientists say to start with only 3 habits at a time. So don't focus on more than 3 things. And I'm going to tell you quickly about one client. She started her road to anti-inflammatory eating. She was taking lots of aspirin every day. Aspirin, by the way, wrecked up her stomach every day to manage her pain. And what really was interesting is she started her road to anti-inflammatory eating by cutting her toast in 4. Now you're going to say that was really simple, but by cutting her toast in four, she just became so much more conscious of everything she ate and what was going on in her body that she was able to figure out a healthier, slowly integrate a healthier way to eating, and she hasn't taken any pain medicine in 2 years. So start slowly, not more than 2 or 3 habits at a time, and I want you to pick 1 or 2 small things you can do and start doing them now. Okay? So I guess we have some time for questions.
We have about 6 minutes, so we'll have to go quickly. Thank you so much, Kim.
You're very welcome.
So if you do have a question, if you can line up at the mic, I'll ask the first question is one of our followers on the webinar.
Okay.
They asked specifically, can black cherry concentrate help manage joint pain? And I'm going to expand on that a little bit to say, what should people be looking at, or should people be considering dietary supplements and concentrates and focus things to round out their nutrition?
So we're starting to have some studies that show that black cherry concentrate can actually reduce inflammation. But the issue we always have is a lot of these studies are done in animals and they didn't get to people yet. And so we're not too sure exactly what effect they may have in people. Certainly, I always advocate that you should be, if we know that this seems to be helpful, for sure, if you want to get some and you want to try some and add it in your diet. And again, that's where keeping track of your symptoms and seeing what happens, that can be very helpful, because if you find it really helps, go for it and do it a lot. You may find it's not going to make that much difference for you, and then it's not worth the, oh, I don't like it, I'm holding my nose while I drink it.
Sure.
Hi. Could you talk about the benefits of juicing versus blending?
There are none.
So what would you recommend? Anything? Is somebody trying to reduce the inflammation?
So juicing is one way of getting more vegetables into you. And if you consume it as a juice or blending, it may be helpful. There are concerns if you juice or you blend. A lot of the digestive enzymes are actually in your mouth, and when you juice and you blend, you actually bypass all that because you swallow things and you don't do any chewing and coating with saliva. So there are some concerns. There's no scientific evidence that there are any benefits, except for that might be a way for you to add fruits and vegetables to your diet.
I'd like to know if food. I'd like to know if food that is high in acid as opposed to high in alkaline. Alkaline versus acidic food in terms of inflammation.
Again, we don't have a lot of information on that. That's not been studied a lot in terms of arthritis. What we do know in terms of the clinical studies that we have and the information that's in traditional medicine is that, for example, eating a lot of red meat, which is considered to be more acidic, I think, is going to make it worse. So if it's because it's acidic, I'm not too sure what, but basically, if you're eating more alkaline, it ends up being more like the Mediterranean diet. I'm not too sure if that's the acid or the alkaline is why it works, but that's the kind of thing you want to eat. Okay. But certainly there's no scientific evidence about the acid-alkaline thing.
There isn't?
No.
Okay. And what about organic food versus non-organic?
So all the studies that show that, eating more fruits and vegetables help reduce inflammation and levels of CRP are usually done with conventionally grown vegetables and fruit. So there are many reasons that you may choose to choose organic food. There's no gain, certainly any of the studies we've done in terms of nutrient value, they're very comparable. So the only difference is in pesticide residue. And so at that point you can make your decision about that. But in terms of nutrition and inflammation, again, we don't see a lot.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. So the meal replacement shakes it's becoming more popular in.
Yeah, can you lift your mic up?
Yeah, the meal replacement shakes are getting more popular among the young peoples.
Right.
So like the company said that it includes everything that you need, or even more than you need in a day. So let's assume that they are telling the truth. So it does include everything. So I'm just wondering if what's your opinion about it, and then do they can they replace the meals?
So meal replacement shakes are kind of wonderful and kind of horrible all at the same time. So they can replace the vitamins and minerals that we know about. What they can't replace are a lot of the phytonutrients that we haven't even identified and don't know what the function is. So if you look at all what we used to call them antioxidants, they tend not to be included in any of those meal replacements. A lot of the meal replacements also don't have any fiber, and a lot of the meal replacements have a lot of sugar. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. The other thing about meal replacements is I think they have a place. Depends on what you would do instead. So, for example, a day like today, I'll probably have a meal replacement shake or bar back at my booth because I'm not going to have time to eat. But it doesn't make up a day, and that's better than not eating all day, and it's better than madly running down to a snack bar later and buying, I don't know, some kind of bag of something. So, or going to a fast food thing and getting stuff. So that's how you want to use it. Or, you know, on a day when you really just feel like you can't cook or you can't do anything and there's nothing in the house or whatever, that's when you want to use it. But to say you're always going to have that instead of food, no.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi. Thanks for your presentation. Very, very informative. Sounds like you're saying a lot of just simplify things and eat whole foods.
Yes.
I like your comments on the meal replacement shakes. I thought you were going to maybe rip it apart, but there is a time and a place because you're faced with these in a busy world where it is better than eating nothing. So my question is a little bit around gut repair. I've been taking some different supplements like some apple cider vinegar, aloe vera juice. I use psyllium husk a little bit, and I find it all helps. When I talk to people like you, I like to find a couple things that are staples that so I can try, and I believe in the try things for a period of time, and if you're not sure, take it out, put it back in, and I mean, everyone has to worry about finances for
right.
this
So you have to figure out what works for you, right?
Yeah,
yeah. So I think we're starting to understand that gut repair is more and more important. We're starting to understand that having healthy gut bacteria plays a key role in any autoimmune disorder and any amount of inflammation anybody has. We see when we do the analysis, we see that people with rheumatoid arthritis actually have different bacteria in their gut than people with a different kind of arthritis. So we know there's something going on. The problem is we don't have a lot of solutions yet. So, and a lot of the solutions are not found in traditional medicine, they're found in alternative medicine. And so at that point, it becomes a little bit of trial and error because we don't have a lot of study. Certainly what we're looking at long-term is specific probiotics because we're understanding that probiotics are as specific as antibiotics. So we are looking at specific probiotics. And we are looking at a specific, even transplanting the probiotics from somebody's gut that doesn't have an autoimmune disorder into somebody who has an autoimmune disorder and seeing how that's going to work. They started doing those kind of experiments and actually quite successfully. They've even done it with weight management, where they take somebody who's naturally thin, they take their probiotics, transplant them to somebody who's obese, and guess what? They get thin. Wow. Yeah, who knew your gut bacteria was what was helping you to stay overweight? Who
Turns
knew,
out the gut was your problem with the gut after all.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I can tell you is you want to maintain a healthy gut bacteria, so you want to be consuming your fermented foods. You want to be consuming lots of fiber, and you want to be making sure that you're not putting so many things into your gut that you're going to promote the growth of unhealthy bacteria. And that would be things like eating too much sugar. That would be things like eating, not eating enough fiber, eating too much refined foods. And all that will contribute, because having healthy gut bacteria actually contributes to the having a nice, it's really interesting. Somebody who has a really nice, healthy gut bacteria has a really nice, healthy intestine, and it's all nice and pink and looks really nice when you look inside it. And somebody who's got yucky bacteria, it's all weird and gross and not so nice. So you really want to concentrate on that, but it's really from the more traditional medicine point of view, it's to really focus on getting some good fermented foods into your diet. So cheese, yogurt, kombucha, fermented,
Sauerkraut.
kimchi, sauerkraut, getting some good fermented foods into your diet.
Thank you.
So
You're welcome.
we're over time, so I'm going to throw the last question very quickly, and we'll need a quick response to the web. But I think it's a good one to finish on. For someone starting to adopt the Mediterranean diet, how soon should they expect to see results?
Depends on the change you make, and it depends on where you're at. Everything depends on you. So some people see results in a week. Some people see results in 3 months. This client I'm talking about probably started to see a change about 4 months in, because she made some very small changes. Somebody else who went from not eating any fish at all, a different client, to adding fish 4 times a week, saw results in, got a lot of omega-3s all of a sudden in her diet and saw results almost immediately.
So it's going to change from person to person, but the upshot is eating better is never a bad decision.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you.
Now, if you have any other questions,